All right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to continue our look at experiments. I gave you a little section to read in the book where they introduce the topic. We're going to talk a little bit today about some terms and an introduction. And I'm also going to send you to, or show you a video series where we're going to learn a lot more about this. The book is going to be great when we go back and start looking at some of the experiments, but the way they describe things and the structure of introducing the terms, I just don't like. They just mention things and they'll have a whole page of writing and mention the vocabulary in the middle of them without really focusing on them. And I really want to make sure that you see the words that you need to see. Okay, and so this video series is done by an instructor called Les Snedden. She's here in New Zealand, and her specialty is NCEA stats. So she'll be able to focus this in very well on exactly what it is that we need to work on. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the video, but I'm also going to stop it and make sure you have time to take some notes, as well as I'm going to make any clarifications or throw in anything that I think is important as well. Okay, so let's go to the site. Now, you don't need to memorize this address or write it down. I've got a link to it in your OneNote. She also has a workbook, and if you just scroll to the very bottom of the site, you can just click on this and upload a copy of it. It'll give you some questions to work, and so this is the work we're going to do. You'll also be able to come back to any of these videos that you want to see, and as well as you could go to YouTube and watch my video with the annotations as well. Okay, it's got a little introduction there, and then workbook pages 2 through 6. If you want to work on that, you can, but we're really going to start here because we've done a little bit of an introduction, but that was kind of funny if you want to watch it. All right. So here we go. So have your notes ready because you are going to be an active participant watching this video, okay? Don't worry about it, says AP.
Hi everyone, and welcome to my video. We're going to be talking about experiments, observational studies, and drawing conclusions. Now before I start, let's ask ourselves a quick question. Why would someone use statistics? Well, maybe a doctor wants to see the effects of multiple types of medication on a patient and figure out which is best. Or an investor wants to find out which company is best to invest in using their ongoing activity.
This isn't meant to have sound.
Whatever the applications may be, there are two major categories of collecting data.
Okay, now that we have sound, let's give this another shot.
Hi everyone, and welcome to my video. We're going to be talking about experiments, observational studies, and drawing conclusions. Now before I start, let's ask ourselves a quick question. Why would someone use statistics? Well, maybe a doctor wants to see the effects of multiple types of medication on a patient and figure out which is best. Or an investor wants to find out which company is best to invest in using their ongoing activities. Whatever the applications may be, there are two major categories of collecting data. The first is observational study. Observational study is when the observer has no direct interaction with the experimental unit.
Okay. Oops. I don't want that. I want this. Okay, so we need to write down what observational study is. This is one of the things that you're going to be talking about. So an observational study is where you're just watching what happens to the groups.
I have to. It's Lola. I have an appointment. Not appointment.
Okay, so an observational study is where you're just watching what happens. So you're not going to do anything. You're just going to be observing any changes. Okay? So that's an observational study.
He is just watching with no influence at all and drawing conclusions from the data. In an experiment, however, investigators apply treatments to experimental units and then proceed to observe the effect of the treatment.
Okay? And this is what we're going to be doing. Is we're going to be looking at an experiment, and this is what we're going to be doing. And so what we're going to do is we'll apply a treatment to the experimental units. And of course, we're going to use people for this. But so you need to make sure that you write in that an experiment It's just where the investigators apply treatment to the experimental units.
On the experimental units. It's pretty much the exact opposite of an observational study, because in an experiment, the observer will place himself and his influence within the field of observation, change at least one factor, take data, and draw conclusions from the data. So now that we've covered the basics, let's get back to the previous examples. The doctor is giving a patient medication and observing effects. So let's say he gives the patient medicine A and sees good results. But he doesn't want to stop there. He continues. Maybe he changes the medication from medicine A to medicine B and sees a better result. He can then conclude that medicine B is more effective than medicine A. This would be an example of an experiment because the doctor is changing the medication, which is a factor, and therefore the outcome. Now obviously this is a small-scale example of what would actually happen. In reality, the doctor would assign medication A to a group of people, medication B to another group of people, and observe the results on a bit of a larger scale. Now, let's get back to the investor example. Let's say an investor wants to put his money in one of 3 companies, but he doesn't know which one. So for about a month, he charts progressions and patterns to see what happens in all the companies. He then finds which is best and puts his money into that company. This would be an observational study, but what if we switched it up a little bit? What if it's not some random investor, but it's the CEO of one of the companies? Let's say this company sells red ties exclusively. Now, sales are good, stock prices are rising, but that's just not enough for our CEO. He thinks blue ties might sell better than red ties. So he stops all manufacturing and sells blue ties instead, just to see what would happen. He has high hopes that the value of the company will skyrocket after he starts selling blue ties, but in fact it does the exact opposite. He then concludes that red ties were better to sell and goes back. This would be an experiment because the CEO changed a factor, the tie color. The difference between the investor and the CEO was that the CEO had direct influence on his company. Again, this was just to get a basic grasp of the concept of experiments. These are not nearly as simple in reality. Now that we know the difference between experiments and observational studies, let's divide them even further. There are 2 types of observational studies. The first is when a sample of a population is chosen at random and observed, and results are assumed about the population. The second is when a sample is chosen from convenience rather than at random. As for the experiments, they can be categorized 2 ways as well. One with a random set of experimental units, and one with a volunteer or not random set of experimental units.
Okay, so let me just interject here that this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be looking at studying individuals that are randomly selected from some population. Now, it's going to look a lot more like we're doing the just individual volunteer because we're going to be going to a classroom and doing this, but we're going to pretend that they were randomly selected, okay? Just for our case, we have to just pretend that these individuals were randomly selected. And we'll be talking about how to do that as we go, okay?
Now, in an observational study, you usually don't want a non-random sample of a population because you don't want to tip the scales in anyone's favor. But in an experiment, you might want a population of interest, as it's called. So in the case of an experiment, the situation would decide what kind of selection the conductor should use. Now, I think I've covered everything, so everyone, thank you for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed it.
All right. So the takeaways here are to think about those 2 different types of studies, either an experiment or an observational study, and how they differ. Okay. Now we're going to be doing an experiment because we're going to be introducing some kind of treatment, and we're all going to be doing basically the same experiment. So if you remember, if some of you were in in stats for year 12 and you did an experiment where you went to the class and most of you played music or made noise or whatever to see if students could work on the same task and get the same results. This time you're going to be doing something very similar to that, but we're going to give you an experiment that you're going to perform, and then you're going to make studies. Now, a little different is we're going to put you in groups, and but they're going to be bigger groups than we did last. If you were in the year 12 stats, I know some of you weren't. And what we'll do is we will have a control group and an experiment group. So you'll learn more about that as we go forward. But it's pretty much the same as you did last time if you were in stats, just going through and doing an experiment on a group of students. Okay? All right. So what I want you to do then, because again, we're trying to keep these short and sweet so you don't get too overwhelmed, I want everybody to upload that workbook that she has. And again, you can just find that. You find the website on the on your OneNote, and you can upload this notebook, and then you can work in this notebook. And so the questions that go with this are just on page 7 of the workbook. We're just going to follow her plan here. And you can go back and watch the video if you need to, if you didn't get everything in your notes, but everything you should need will be there. If you want to go back and watch this first video, it's a little bit of fun, but it does introduce some ideas and get you thinking about the concept. You don't have to, but it could be beneficial for you. Okay? All right, let me see if I can come back to you guys. All right, stop sharing the screen. All right, so you're going to see this one, other than some terms and ideas, this one's going to go pretty quickly, this selection. So hopefully we'll have all of the lessons done, and then when we get back to the college, we can jump right into actually performing the experiments and then writing up our conclusions. Okay? So, how'd it look? Pretty easy? Too easy? That wasn't very much in that video. There's going to be more in some of the other videos. Okay? All right. Then that's really all I have for you today. So get to work on those questions. Make sure you upload that workbook and get to work on those questions on those pages, and make sure you know on the OneNote where you can find things. Okay? All righty. Well, if you don't have any other questions, then that's all I've got for you today. So go on and enjoy the rest of your day. Get outside. It's beautifully sunny outside, even though it's windy as heck. But what else is new? All right.
Thank you.
Cool beans. All right. I'll see you later, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks.
Now, maneuvers have moved us out.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. See ya.